This is to raise the issue of the markets, the historic markets in Dublin City, the Iveagh Market and the Moore Street Market. The Minister has indicated that she's had some discussions, particularly in relation to Moore Street, with the City Council. To say that both Moore Street and the Iveagh Market are in a sorry state is a gross understatement. They are literally in a vicious circle of decline. The buildings are dilapidated, and in terms of Moore Street, myself and indeed others in the chamber here have been members of the Moore Street Advisory Committee, and I'd like to know what progress has been made to give life back to Moore Street.
Minister has 2 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Ken Kohler. My role with regard to the protection and management of our architectural heritage is set out in the provisions of relevant legislation, as are the roles of local authorities and the responsibilities of owners. And Part 4 of the Planning and Development Act gives primary responsibility to planning authorities to identify and protect the architectural heritage by including particular structures on their record of protected structures. An inclusion on the record of protected structures places a duty of care on the owners and occupiers of those protected structures, and also gives planning authorities powers to deal with development proposals affecting them and to seek the safeguard of their future. And the Iveagh Market, which is the subject of your question, is a protected structure in the ownership of Dublin City Council and is currently on lease from the Council to a private developer. And the matter is therefore primarily one between those two parties. And as the owner of the Iveagh Market, the local authority has a duty under the Acts to ensure the structure does not become endangered. And my role in relation to protected structures is mainly advisory. And officials of my department have, however, contacted Dublin City Council to ascertain its plans and remain available to advise in any manner as required. And Dublin City Council has informed my department that it is actively pursuing the most efficient means available to it to ensure that the Iveagh Market building is refurbished and returned to beneficial use. And the department has not discussed the renovation of any other historic market building within Dublin City Council. The department also provides financial support for the protection of heritage buildings and historic structures through the Historic Structures Fund and the Built Heritage Investment Scheme, which are administered by local authorities. And I announced funding of 4.3 million for 478 projects under these schemes in March. And I understand, however, that the scale of investment needed for the structure mentioned would mean that the levels of grant funding available under those schemes would not be sufficient. But my officials will remain in contact with the Dublin City Council in relation to the Iveagh Market.
Deputy Burton, 1 minute.
Well, can I just say that in the question I put to the Minister, I asked about if you had held discussions about renovating a number of historic markets in Dublin, such as the Iveagh Market. The Iveagh Market was just a particular example because its dilapidation is extreme. Now, given that you're a minister from Dublin who has the responsibility for culture, there's an enormous opportunity, I might put it to you here, Minister, to step in and play a vital role in saving the Iveagh Market, which is in serious danger of permanent destruction given its dilapidation. I don't know if you've had an opportunity or taken the opportunity to visit it. It's in Francis Street. It's in an area which is heavily patroned by tourists. Unfortunately, the theatre opposite got knocked down recently to be built into a hotel. Now, I'm just asking you, Minister, as Minister, with your knowledge of Dublin and being from Dublin, to actually step in, use that great power you have for a period of years to actually do something to save two really important features of Dublin. On Moore Street, I'd just like to know as well, what progress have you made? You were, I thought, to take some additional initiatives.
Minister, 1 minute.
Thank you, Deputy, for your comments. It's in relation to the Iveagh Market, first of all, it's not a matter for our department, plain and simple. It's a matter for the owner of Dublin City Council, and that is the forum in which you or your colleagues should probably pursue the matter. The cost of refurbishment and renovation or restoration is exacerbated, as you've said yourself, there's years of inaction by the council and the lessee, and it's not fair to look to shift the burden of that neglect, I think, onto the taxpayer. And the Dublin City Council itself commissioned a report on the condition of the building earlier this year, and that has estimated the cost of restoration at 13 million. That 30 million cost was what the City Council commissioned report came up with, and we didn't commission the report as it's not our business to do so. So it's a matter in the first instance for the Council, and the cost is in the public realm, and this cost is the entire annual budget for the National Parks and Wildlife Service and 3 times our annual built heritage budget. So I think, Deputy, you probably need to put it a bit in perspective, because the solution is not to drop every poorly kept building in public ownership at the department's door. The City Council has to step up, I think, period, because it's the owner.
Deputy Burton's final supplementary.
I have to say, Minister, I find your attitude quite extraordinary. I don't know if you've ever been to Francis Street or you've ever been to the Liberties or the Coombe, but it's an extraordinary feature of the area. It's a really famous historical building. Not only is culture in your title, so is heritage, as far as I know. And it's really sad, actually, to hear a Minister for Culture and Heritage just say, you know, this is a government that can spend millions and millions on messaging and yet can allow an amazing building like the Iveagh Markets, which in other cities, by the way, would be a vibrant market area, drawing tourists, providing jobs for artisans, producers, for artists, for the local community as well. And I just think you're missing an enormous opportunity, maybe through a lack of imagination. In relation to Moore Street, though, Minister, I would like to know there, what are the next steps? I mean, are you just handing that over now to Dublin City Council? I'd be really sad if that was the case, because, again, the government of which I was a member bought and secured the purchase of the houses in Moore Street, where the ceasefire was signed. And you know that there's been a huge discussion and enormous work by people across the House on this.
Before the Minister responds, a brief supplementary from Jack O'Snuggle.
Briefly, the Iveagh Market is in my constituency. It's part of the built heritage. It's an absolutely gorgeous building if it wasn't allowed to go into the severe dilapidation of years of dereliction. The years of inaction isn't because of Dublin City Council, it's because, foolishly in some ways, they gave a lease to a developer who sat on it and has caused a dilapidation in recent years. But separate to that, Minister, you received the progress report from the Moore Street Advisory Group at the end of July or early August, and there was a number of recommendations in that, and I hope that you'll be able to let us know what progress has been made in acting on those proposals.
I'll also give a brief supplementary to Deputy Tommy Rowan, and it's brief.
Yeah, thanks, Lascan. Well, Minister, of course, we all admire the English market, in particular in Cork. I don't agree with my colleague. I think Dublin City Council has a huge responsibility for not developing the Iveagh Markets, and you know, it's been a failed responsibility, another failure, unfortunately, by Dublin City Council management over the years, along with the national government.
My good Minister, make the best of a minute.
I'll try. First of all, just in relation to Moore Street, we have received the recommendations, and I know that the Moore Street Advisory Group is of the view that there's an urgency to securing the fabric of the national monuments at number 14 to number 17 on Moore Street, and it's confirmed as well its support for the Office of Public Works in carrying out this process as soon as possible, and to opening up the houses to limited tours not later than the summer of 2021. We're looking at the recommendations, and we'll be doing everything to support the expert advisory group in relation to that. The Iveagh Market itself, I know the area well. I know the Coombe. Deputy Burton had both my sons in the Coombe Hospital, which is there, obviously. I think I've made it very clear that, you know, that my role is only advisory in relation to this. And ultimately, I know that there are discussions, there's telephone contact at least between the Department and Dublin City Council in order to try to assist them in relation to the Iveagh Market. And I know that they're looking at their options in relation to this, and they've committed to keeping us informed of its discussions with the developer that Deputy O'Snuddick mentions, who holds the lease. I agree with Deputy Broom that it is a matter for the Council. The developer was advised by Dublin City Council that the estimated cost will be in the region of 13 million, as I mentioned already, and the entire project has been estimated at approximately 30 million. And the Council are awaiting the developer's comments, Lascian Ceola, on the projected financial costs of the project before it takes final action.
And